Hi, this is Anita Craig, the founder of Flow and the Master Leader Program. And today we have with us one of our great guest speakers, Deshun Deysel Bester. Your message of your life, as well as through your speaking, really helps to inspire and motivate individuals. And so we're hoping just to glean a little bit from you today in our chat.
So yes, I do tick a lot of boxes. As a person who came out of the world of teaching, I started out in human movement science, so sport and admin was always part of my life. As a participant, as a coach, as a person who had to organize tournaments, and so coming out of the teaching fraternity way back in the mid-90s, I kind of, as a result of climbing Everest with that first South African expedition, who got our new democratic flag to the summit of Everest in '96, I then saw this whole world open up to me, and it started with me just being invited to speak about my journey, because up until then people had never seen a black person aiming for high altitude climbing.
With every peak and with every summit, there's also a trough and there's a valley.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious to hear more about that, because that for me also speaks to this development and this muscle building, whether it be in the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, all encompassing, for the sense of resilience, overcoming the struggles. And you are such a representation of that. It'd be lovely just to hear, in your own words, a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Anita. I think for me, working with people, especially the other program I've developed out of all of this is called Tackling the Summit, which is essentially a way to plot tangibly your strategic vision, whether it's 2 years, 2.5 years, 5 years, whatever it might be. And in Tackling the Summit, I make the point that when we're climbing Everest, you don't just get to base camp and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and you're at the summit. The process is a lot more encompassing. It requires a lot of you, and there's a lot of repetition in it. So one of the things that's so iterative about climbing an Everest expedition is that you've got to return to base camp iteratively. So many organizations and teams create a strategy, and then it's the static linear idea of where of course we're going to reach this and this and this and this by that and that time. But because they are human beings who have to execute this, there are too many variables, there are too many dynamics that come with having people around. Things that impact people emotionally, things that impact them in their lives, if they have families, elderly parents. There are all kinds of things that impact those that have to implement the strategy. So leadership and leadership in strategy is all about being very aware, self-aware, but also aware of what is happening within the people that you're leading.
Just for now, this program looks at this inner journey, and I'm sure there were many moments, and perhaps you can just capture one for us in essence, that inner journey that you personally had to go through in maybe some of your toughest, enduring, most challenging moments of being on the mountain, this metaphor for life, in a very visceral, tangible, life-confronting way. Can you speak to that insight just for a moment, just to give us a sense of what you had to work through, go through?
I remember at one stage I was climbing Everest from Camp 1 to Camp 2, and I got so exhausted, and I knew I had at least another 4 hours ahead of me. So I had done the majority of it, so 60% of the journey I had done, but I was so exhausted, and I didn't know how much of me could do the last 40%. And I knew, I kind of had this moment where I was like, what would happen if I give up right here? And I found myself completely alone. And the rest of my team were way ahead of me. Now, this happens in team, you see. So if you climb at your own pace, then you've got to hold yourself accountable for what you need to do on a mountain. My Sherpa was also ahead of me. And so I was just in this space where I was on my own, completely inexperienced on this mountain. And I just wanted to sit down and forget about the whole thing. But I'd now done 60% of the journey, so I had a decision to make. Do I turn back and go back to where I know is safe and comfortable, or do I try push myself forward? And fortunately, before Bruce Herod left me alone, because he was starting to get quite frustrated with my pace, and I said, okay, just leave me alone, carry on, because I get stubborn like that. And he said, if you do find yourself struggling, just count. I thought, okay, that, you know, it's the most basic thing you can do is count your steps. So I just counted 1 to 100. Literally. Each step, literally 1, 2, 3, like that, until I got to 100, and then I'd start again. And it was the most basic thing I had control over at that time. It helps to have very, very basic tools to push you forward. Because too often, if we don't have the tools, we think that's the moment we're supposed to give up. So that's just one of the stories I can share, but there are hundreds.
What would you say, Deshun, are the competencies and the qualities that organizations need to invest in their people to develop, and or individuals and leaders in their own rights, of their own, in their own world, in their own contexts, need to learn and cultivate?
I think I'm going to start with the leadership side, and then I'll move over. I think that leadership starts with the individual. It starts with me, right? So there are 2 things to that. The first aspect is self-awareness, but a deep level of self-awareness. Because it's through the self-awareness that I can identify where I need work, where I need development, and where I'm strong, and people can rely on me for those strengths, right? The other side of it is awareness of others. So how well do you know those that you are making demands of?
Deshun, you've already left a legacy on this planet, but I'm going to ask you a question, perhaps now looking at your life forwards in terms of all the achievements of past and moving into this place of really living with a sense of meaning and purpose and giving back in the ways that you are and empowering others. What is the legacy that you're wanting to leave on this planet Earth?
Well, I'm a mom, so one of my first things is that, number one, when my children are grown up, I want them to look back and be proud of me, proud of the choices I've made, proud of the areas, the atmospheres I've changed, proud of things that live beyond me. And so as a result, that sort of guides everything that I'm doing in terms of the legacy I want to leave. I am very involved in sport for development. I believe that sport has the power to change people's lives, to change the world. It has a lot of wonderful components of leadership and teamwork and all of that. We can see that when sporting teams do well. And young people, South Africa has an amazing talent base. But to nurture that talent, to get into those spaces, is something that I'm very passionate about.
And then a last parting question here, in terms of your sense of, you know, this program is here to bring consciousness to all facets of life, individuals in their societies and communities of which they're a part of, in the workplace, organizations themselves becoming a force for good. And what would your message be to, you know, potential participants out there considering joining us on this inaugural program in 2021?
Anita, I would invite people to come on a journey of exploration, to not have any preconceived ideas, to be open to learning new things, and even to unlearn some aspects of what they assumed about leadership. And about performance. One of the things that excites me about a journey like this is it's not one-dimensional. It brings in all elements of not only personal development, but how to be equipped to develop others. And, you know, the Master Leader program for me positions itself as a place to go to if you want to equip people for the future workplace, but also for how to cope with the way the world is changing, and especially the resilience you mentioned earlier, how to be responsive to the change, that the disruptive change that happens nowadays so much more frequently than it did, say, a decade ago.
Wonderful. Thank you. We look forward to this journey ahead with great sense of wonder, excitement, purpose, and the sense of us, you know, living beyond ourselves in these times. And thank you again, Deshun. It's been an absolute joy to have this dialogue with you here.
Thank you, Anita.